Okay, this video is about the disease Pellagra. Here's the characteristic distribution of it. It looks kind of like psoriasis, except it has a different distribution. Psoriasis is often on extensor surfaces like the elbow, whereas Pellagra is on like stocking and glove, glove like around the hands here and around the feet, stocking distribution. One of the earlier pioneers in studying the disease was a guy named Casals. So this is called Casals necklace. So that same rough skin. Pel means Pellagra. Pel is skin, and agra is like disease, so it's like skin disease, sort of its ancient derivations from Greek and Latin. So Pellagra became a big deal, especially in the USA and the South in the late 1800s, early 1900s. Over 3 million people were affected and over 100,000 died. It was most commonly due to people who were eating too much cornmeal, because corn, when it's milled, that lowers the amount of niacin and the amount of tryptophan. Tryptophan is the precursor amino acid to make niacin. Niacin is one of the vitamins, B3 vitamin. Okay, it's also called nicotinic acid, but the tobacco makers and the vitamin, they didn't want people to confuse nicotinic acid with nicotine, so they called it niacin. That's where the name comes from. It'll also cause thickening of the tongue. A beefy tongue is a characteristic description of that. Here's a patient who had it. This is Casals necklace with Pellagra skin lesions in the form of a necklace. Here they are in the classic, glove distribution. Okay, so I've talked recently, I gave a lecture on scurvy, and scurvy was the big thing in the English, British sailors due to not eating any fruits and vegetables, and, half of them would die when they'd go on long trips. Vitamin C, these are the water-soluble vitamins like vitamin C, thiamine, and now we're talking about niacin. So the B vitamins are water-soluble. You can remember fat-soluble because that's ADEK, A-D-E-K. Sounds like an attic of a house, ADEK. Okay, and then the water-soluble ones are pretty much most of the other ones. And, classically there's the B vitamins. There's about 8 or 9 of those. There's the vitamin C. Okay, those are the ones to know about. Let's see, we talked about Japanese sailors in the previous lecture. From eating all the white rice, they'd be low in thiamine, B1, get beriberi, neuropathy, congestive heart failure on long trips. A lot of them died. And then the guy, Takaki, figured out to give them barley because that's got, the thiamine, and then they won't get it. So he became the barley baron of Japan. All right, but who gets these diseases? People with really limited diets, like sailors on long trips, months and months. People with anorexia nervosa, nursing home residents, orphanages, prisons, nursing homes. Well, I kind of repeated myself there. Poor elderly people. Okay, and it was the Southerners during Reconstruction. The Civil War wasn't just a defeat of the South. It was more like the RAPE of the South. It was a brutal, I'll talk about that in other lectures, but I've actually given previous lectures on, Lincoln and how the story told in the public schools is very different than the reality. And I had a previous art lecture. Maybe I'll run those again soon about the Civil War. That was really, I liked it. I thought the art was good. So the Southerners during Reconstruction and early 1900s, they were very poor, often close to starving, and they had a lot of Pellagra because they were eating primarily milled corn. They talked about the triple M diet, meat, meal, and molasses, but this milled corn was a big staple in the diet, and it's deficient in the niacin, which is vitamin B3, and the tryptophan, the precursor amino acid for making niacin. You'll get longer storage when you remove the fat as you mill something, just like when you go from brown rice to white rice, and you can cook it faster, but the problem is you also decrease the nutrients. Okay, tryptophan is a precursor amino acid to make niacin, also known as nicotinic acid. You need niacin to make NAD, nicotinamide adenine dinucleotide, because you're going to need that in the mitochondria for carrying electrons to the electron transport chains for oxidative phosphorylation. You're going to need that for DNA repair enzymes. Cells with fast turnover are affected because they can't repair their DNA, and the cells that need lots of ATP, like brain cells, are affected. So the classic 3 lesions are dermatitis, skin lesion, because skin has fast turnover, so it suffers a lot in Pellagra. The gut, you get diarrhea because the gut lining has fast turnover of from the stem cells at the bottom of the crypts of Lieberkühn as they pass upward to make the rest of the enterocytes. And dementia, confusion in the brain because you can't make enough ATP because you're lacking in NAD. So it can be used as a medication, niacin, to lower blood lipids. There's also some schizophrenic patients that tend to be especially deficient in niacin, and they can do incredibly well, sometimes even be cured. So with any schizophrenic, it's worth considering niacin as a treatment. I given previous lectures on schizophrenia, and I went through the whole, way that some of them did really well in residential facilities. Okay, all right, that they did much better with these residential treatments like soteria than they did with antipsychotic medications. All right, so just trying to get myself out of the way here. Here is a pyridine. A pyridine is a 6-member ring. It looks like an aromatic ring, like a benzene, except one of the members is a nitrogen. Okay, so this pyridine ring is an important basic structure in biochemistry. All right, nicotinic acid then is you just take your pyridine ring and you add a carboxylic acid to it. Okay, so here's the carboxylic acid. So that's nicotinic acid, also now called niacin. So it's just a pyridine plus a carboxylic acid. All right, so now we're going to build a fancier molecule here. You don't need to know all this. I just want you to be aware that it exists. I'm trying to move myself here. Okay. So here's NAD+. And this is what is used to carry electrons in the mitochondria. When it's got an electron on it, it's reduced. It'll become NADH. Okay, so you can see here's the pyridine ring. Okay, and here's the carbonyl group, double bonded carbon to oxygen. But it's a nicotinamide. So instead of having a carboxylic acid with a hydroxyl group here, you have an amide because you got the NH2 on it. All right. And then here's the adenine. So it's dinucleotide, 2 nucleotides, okay, attached by their phosphates. And so that's a really important molecule for energy production, and it's also related to DNA metabolism. All right. Now I'll just show you one more thing here. This is the last slide here, and just so you're aware it exists. Again, you don't need to know any of this, but just to be aware it exists. That dietary tryptophan, through a series of steps, can be made into NAD. That's all you need to know. The tryptophan is the precursor for NAD. So anyways, I hope you found that interesting about pellagra, how it was a big problem, especially in the South, especially because they were eating too much cornmeal, which was deficient in the niacin. Okay, and then it's also interesting that niacin can be a treatment. Some schizophrenics respond really, really well to it. So hope you found that helpful.